When it comes to showing your game collection to somebody, the reaction could be anything from, "Oh, you have a problem," to, "Oh my goodness, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. So what exactly is going on here?" Well, for fans of retro video games, it sure makes a whole lot of sense to have a bunch of them, but for people who aren't into retro gaming, well, the thought has never even crossed their mind before, perhaps, of even just owning one or two video games. So the thought of owning 100 or more video games, heck, I know some of you have collections going into the thousands, may just seem like pure insanity to them. Which is unfortunate because nobody likes being judged for their passion, right? And in fact, the next time somebody says, "You have too many video games," you look them in the eye and you say, "Hey, wait just a minute there, buddy. Only I get to say if I have too many video games or not. I have too many video games." If you want to understand where they're coming from, and heck, maybe you don't, but if you do, I find it's helpful to put yourself in their shoes. I mean, have you ever been looking at a whole lot of something that to you just looks like a whole lot of nothing? Let me tell you, I sure have. Quick little story for you. So I'm on vacation and I go to this fancy grocery store. And while I'm inside this store, at one point I hear a whole bunch of people who are hemming, hooing, and hawing about something. So I think, oh my goodness, I better go check it out. So I go over to where this is and I find a giant wall of wine. And wine is something that people really like, and I can appreciate that people are into it, but for me personally, it's just not my thing. So I'm there staring at this wall of wine, and all I can think to myself is, does this place have a wall of bananas too? But the thing is, I was still able to appreciate that that was a cool thing for people who were into wine. And ultimately, when you show your game collection to people, I think what it comes down to is how much does that person respect video games, regardless of whether or not they play games or care about them themselves. Just think of something that you don't have any respect for and imagine seeing a whole bunch of it. Like if somebody shows me a closet full of glow-in-the-dark clown dolls, instantly I think, this creeps me out. I'm gonna place this one in the not impressed category. But enough about people who don't respect your game collection. Screw them, right? Let's talk about people who do respect your game collection and actually think it's cool for you to share it with them. I always find it really interesting to see what people react to because you really have no idea what they're gonna think. I had somebody who got super excited about Duck Hunt and the NES Zapper. And I thought, well, you know, that was a really big deal and it's a cool thing, but it's also something that everybody has. Now, on one hand, it's just cool to see excitement for games regardless of what it's about. It's an awesome thing. But on the other hand, in the back of your mind, there's more subtle things about your collection that you're really proud of, and it can be kind of hard to convey this to people. Like they say, "Oh my goodness, Sonic 2, I love that game as a kid." To which you respond, "You insensitive jerk, aren't you gonna ask me which revision of Revenge of Shinobi I have to find out whether or not it's the one that has all the cameos in it? Do you have any idea what I went through to get this? Looking up different pictures of PCBs? What is wrong with you?" But then every now and then they'll hit you in one of your soft spots, saying something like, "Whoa, Sega Saturn, I didn't even know these actually existed." And you say, "Oh yeah, they exist, and we should probably play some Virtua Cop 2 because it's pretty awesome, and I got two Sega Saturn Stunners." And speaking of wanting to play games, that's a really good thing to keep in mind because a lot of times it can be hard to know what exactly someone's thinking when they're looking at your collection, especially if they're really quiet. It's like, what's going on inside that brain of theirs? Who knows what they're thinking about? Well, if they ask you to play a game, then bingo, bango, bongo, that's a dead giveaway that they care about your collection. Something I find kind of funny is when somebody's showing somebody their game collection and they get to that point where they're sensing the person doesn't really care and they think, well, screw it, let's just throw out some of the values of some of these games because everybody understands money, so maybe that'll perk their ears up a little bit. I don't want them just thinking that I'm collecting socks or something worthless like that. By the way, apologies to any of you sock collectors out there. Perhaps there is a valuable market for socks out there that I was unaware aware of. But I find what will often happen if you do this is their reaction will just be, this stuff is actually worth money? What is wrong with people? And you're just like, no, video games are good. Nah, to heck with you. Get out of my game room. You don't understand. Which is why I always recommend to just share your games with the approach of, this is something that I'm really passionate about, and either they think that's cool or they don't. But now it's time to talk about kids. And what do kids do by nature? That's right, they destroy things, which tends to not pair very nicely with a whole bunch of old games that you care about. But on the other hand, I talk all the time about getting younger generations to care about these older games. So what are we to do? Well, for some of you, the solution is, hey, how about you appreciate these games without actually touching them? I've heard of some parents who won't let their kids touch anything except for the actual controllers themselves. Of course, if you're talking about your own kids, then you'll likely have more control over the situation, since over time you can teach them and show them how to be handling all your video game stuff. Now, as to whether or not they actually follow that, who knows? But if you're dealing with other people's kids, you don't always know what to expect. I remember one of you writing a comment saying that your child had a birthday party and a whole bunch of your child's friends came over, and when you went to check how the game room was doing, it looked like a colony of ants had found an apple core. Now, I forget the username of that commenter, but let's have a quick moment of silence for that person's collection. That one's for you, my friend. Also, I feel like I should mention that when your game room isn't being ravaged by a pack of wild children, you do have the opportunity to clean, organize, and make it all very presentable. And I think this goes a long way in when you do show your game room to people, them thinking, oh, this is kind of nice. This is kind of cool. If you've just got stuff scattered all over the place and it looks like a total dump, it's not going to give off a very good impression. But in general, if you care about something, then you're probably gonna have it well organized. And actually, as kind of a rule, if you'll allow me to put my consolidation hat on for a second. Oh, I don't actually have a consolidation hat, but just bear with me. If you can't keep something clean and organized, then maybe you have too much. If you can't even bother to have something put away, then do you really even care that much about having it? I've seen people with huge, massive collections and they have it all super well organized, and so when people see it, they think, well, looks like they can manage it all right, so I don't see any problem with them having so much. But ultimately, nobody's ever gonna appreciate your collection quite as much as you, which is convenient since you're the one who owns it. I mean, a lot of us collect these games one by one, and there's a lot of very special context around why we have the games that we do. But by this point of the video, a lot of you may be thinking, all right, Mr. Jack Wagon, why don't you show us your dang collection like we keep asking for repeatedly? To which I would respond, I am working on something that will address that. It's not going to be a straight up game room tour video, but it will incorporate it somehow. But with all of that said, that'll wrap up this video. And for this video's question, I got a fun one that I'm really looking forward to hearing the answers for. Basically, what's the most memorable experience you have of showing your game room or game collection to someone? I really want to hear those answers. So be sure to leave those comments down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah, and he's talking about video games. He's